She was just a quiet woman at the range, ignored by the smug regulars until her first shot shattered the range's top record, leaving everyone stunned. If you love jaw-dropping HOA drama, Karen showdowns, and epic underdog stories, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and ring the bell for more wild tales like this one. The small town of Crestwood had a shooting range tucked away on the edge of its quiet, manicured neighborhoods, where the air always smelled faintly of gunpowder and pine. It was a place dominated by a tight-knit group of regulars, mostly men who swaggered in with their custom rifles, tossing around jargon and bragging about their precision. They called themselves the Crestwood Sharpshooters, an unofficial club that acted like they owned the range. Among them, Derek Hansen reigned supreme. A broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, Derek was the range's undisputed king, his name etched at the top of the leaderboard for years. His record, 98 out of 100 points on the 500-yard precision course, was a legend, a score no one had come close to touching. The leaderboard, a weathered wooden board nailed to the range's main wall, was practically a shrine to his dominance. To the regulars, Derek was untouchable, his every shot a performance that demanded respect. Newcomers were tolerated but rarely welcomed, especially if they didn't fit the mold of the sharpshooter's macho camaraderie. Women in particular were often ignored, their presence met with subtle smirks or outright dismissal. That's where Ellen Harper came in. Ellen was a 52-year-old widow, unassuming and soft-spoken, with graying hair pulled into a neat bun and a wardrobe of practical cardigans. She'd moved to Crestwood a year ago after her husband's passing, seeking a quieter life in the suburbs. Ellen kept to herself, living in a modest house at the edge of the Crestwood HOA's jurisdiction, where she tended her garden and avoided the neighborhood's petty dramas. But Ellen had a secret, one she hadn't shared with anyone in Crestwood. She'd grown up on a farm where her father, a former military marksman, had taught her to shoot before she could drive. Rifles, pistols, shotguns, she'd handled them all, her hands steady and her aim true. Shooting was her solace, a skill she'd honed in solitude over decades. When she heard about the Crestwood Range, she decided to visit, hoping to reconnect with that part of herself. She showed up one crisp Saturday morning, carrying a battered rifle case that looked older than she was. The range was buzzing with the usual crowd, Derek and his crew laughing loudly, their voices carrying over the pop of gunfire. Ellen signed in at the front desk, her name barely registering with the clerk, who was too busy chatting with a sharpshooter about Derek's latest feat. She was assigned a lane at the far end, away from the main action, and no one paid her any mind as she set up her gear. The regulars barely glanced her way, their eyes skimming over her plain appearance and outdated equipment. To them, she was just another amateur, probably there to fumble through a few shots before leaving embarrassed. Ellen didn't care. She adjusted her ear protection, checked her rifle, an old but meticulously maintained Remington 700, and took her position. The range was set for the 500-yard course, the same one Derek had mastered. She lined up her shot, her movements calm and deliberate, her breathing steady. The first crack of her rifle echoed across the range, and the digital scoreboard flickered. A perfect bullseye. The regulars didn't notice at first, too caught up in their own routines. But Ellen kept shooting, each round hitting its mark with surgical precision. By her 5th shot, a few heads turned. By her 10th, a small crowd had gathered, their murmurs growing louder with each ping of the target. The scoreboard was climbing, 80, 85, 90 points, and Ellen hadn't missed once. Derek, who'd been joking with his buddies, finally noticed the commotion. He sauntered over, his smirk fading as he saw the numbers. Ellen's score was creeping dangerously close to his record. The air grew thick with tension, the regulars exchanging uneasy glances. This nobody, this quiet woman in a cardigan, was threatening the king's throne. Ellen finished her set, her final score flashing on the screen. 99 out of 100, 1 point above Derek's record. The range fell silent, the only sound the faint hum of the ventilation system. Derek's face was a mask of disbelief, his jaw tight as he stared at the leaderboard. Ellen calmly packed up her rifle, oblivious to the storm she'd just unleashed. As she walked out, the whispers exploded into arguments, with Derek demanding a recheck of the scoring system. The regulars were divided, some grudgingly impressed, others insisting it was a fluke. Ellen didn't hear any of it. She drove home, her rifle case in the back seat, unaware that her single visit had just set Crestwood's shooting range on fire. The news spread like wildfire through the HOA's gossip channels, with neighbors whispering about the mysterious woman who dethroned Derek Hansen. But this was only the beginning. Ellen's quiet triumph was about to collide with the sharpshooter's pride and the HOA's meddling ways. Ellen's record-breaking performance at the range didn't stay quiet for long. By Monday morning, the Crestwood HOA's online forum, a cesspool of complaints about unmowed lawns and unapproved mailbox colors, was ablaze with speculation. Some called Ellen a hidden prodigy. Others claimed the range's equipment must have malfunctioned. Derek, humiliated by the loss of his title, was determined to reclaim his crown. He spent hours at the range that week, running through rounds, his shots as precise as ever but falling just short of Ellen's 99. His frustration was palpable, his usual swagger replaced by a grim focus. He demanded the range manager, a nervous man named Carl, investigate Ellen's score. Carl, intimidated by Derek's influence, agreed to review the system but found no errors. Ellen's score was legitimate. The sharpshooters, loyal to Derek, began a campaign to discredit her. They posted on the HOA forum, questioning her background, her rifle, even her right to use the range as a newcomer who hadn't paid her dues to the community. The HOA president, Marjorie Klein, a self-appointed guardian of Crestwood standards, took a keen interest. Marjorie was the quintessential HOA tyrant, her emails filled with passive-aggressive reminders about hedge heights and garbage bin etiquette. She saw Ellen's sudden fame as a disruption to the neighborhood's order. Marjorie didn't know Ellen personally. Ellen had never attended an HOA meeting, but she didn't like the idea of an outsider upstaging a respected figure like Derek. She sent Ellen a curt email, requesting proof of her range membership and a copy of her rifle's registration, citing community safety concerns. Ellen, who checked her email sparingly, didn't respond. This only fueled Marjorie's suspicions, and she began rallying the HOA board to discuss the range incident at their next meeting. Meanwhile, Ellen returned to the range the following weekend, unaware of the storm brewing behind her. The regulars were waiting, their eyes sharp with curiosity and resentment. Derek was there, his rifle gleaming, his posture rigid. He'd spent days preparing, determined to erase Ellen's name from the leaderboard. The range was packed, word having spread that the mystery woman was back. Ellen set up in her usual quiet way, ignoring the stares. She ran through the 500-yard course again, her shot steady and precise. The scoreboard climbed 92, 95, 98, and the crowd held its breath. When her final score flashed, 99 again, a collective gasp rippled through the range. She'd matched her own record, cementing her place at the top. Derek's face was a storm cloud as he stepped up next, his shots crisp but unable to break 98. The sharpshooters muttered among themselves, some accusing Ellen of cheating, though they had no proof. Others began to wonder if she was more than she seemed. Ellen, as always, packed up and left without a word, her calm demeanor infuriating her detractors. Back at the HOA, Marjorie was livid. Ellen's second performance had only amplified the neighborhood's obsession, with residents now stopping by her house to catch a glimpse of the sharpshooter widow. Marjorie called an emergency HOA meeting, framing Ellen's range visits as a potential disruption to community harmony. She proposed new rules for the range, including a requirement for all users to submit a detailed background check and proof of long-term residency in Crestwood. The motion was thinly veiled, aimed directly at Ellen. The board, swayed by Marjorie's influence and Derek's complaints, voted in favor. Notices went out the next day, posted at the range and mailed to every household. Ellen received hers in her mailbox, a single sheet of paper outlining the new regulations. She read it quietly, her expression unreadable, then set it aside. The HOA thought they'd won, that their rules would push Ellen out. But Ellen wasn't one to be bullied. She'd faced worse than nosy neighbors and bruised egos in her life. The range was her sanctuary, and she wasn't about to let it go without a fight. The HOA's new rules hit the Crestwood range like a shockwave, but Ellen wasn't fazed. She spent the next week gathering the required documents, her range membership, her rifle's registration, and a letter confirming her residency. She submitted them to the HOA office with the same quiet efficiency she brought to her shooting. Marjorie, expecting Ellen to back down, was caught off guard. The board had no choice but to approve her compliance, but Marjorie wasn't done. She pushed for an additional rule, a community vetting process for range users, requiring a public hearing where applicants would face questions from the HOA board and residents. It was a blatant attempt to humiliate Ellen, to force her into the spotlight she'd avoided. The hearing was scheduled for the following Saturday, the same day as the range's annual precision tournament, a high-stakes event where Derek had always dominated. The timing was no coincidence. Marjorie wanted Ellen's hearing to overshadow her presence at the range. Word of the hearing spread, and the neighborhood buzzed with anticipation. Some residents supported Ellen, intrigued by her skill and tired of the HOA's overreach. Others, loyal to Derek and the sharpshooters, saw it as a chance to expose her as a fluke. On the day of the hearing, the community center was packed, with Marjorie presiding like a judge. Ellen arrived, her rifle case in hand, her expression calm but resolute. The board peppered her with questions about her background, her training, her intentions at the range. Ellen answered simply, revealing little beyond her farm upbringing and her father's teachings. Her composure frustrated Marjorie, who pushed harder, implying Ellen's secrecy was suspicious. The crowd was divided, some nodding in approval at Ellen's straightforward answers, others whispering doubts. When the hearing ended, the board grudgingly approved Ellen's continued access to the range, unable to find any legitimate reason to deny her. But the real showdown was happening across town at the tournament. Ellen had signed up weeks ago, before the HOA's meddling, and she arrived at the range just as the event began. The stands were filled with spectators, the air electric with anticipation. Derek was there, his confidence restored, ready to reclaim his title. The tournament was grueling, with shooters competing across multiple rounds at increasing distances. Derek's performance was flawless, his score climbing to 97 by the final round. The sharpshooters cheered, certain he'd secure his legacy. Then Ellen stepped up. Her shots were a study in precision, each one hitting the target center with unnerving consistency. The scoreboard ticked upward, 96, 97, 98, and when her final shot landed, the screen flashed 100. A perfect score, unprecedented in Crestwood's history. The crowd erupted, some in awe, others in disbelief. Derek's face drained of color as he stared at the leaderboard, his name now second to Ellen's. The sharpshooters were silent, their bravado gone. Marjorie, watching from the stands, looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Ellen packed up her rifle, her expression unchanged, and left the range as the crowd's cheers followed her. The HOA's attempts to control her had backfired spectacularly. Over the next few weeks, the neighborhood shifted. Ellen's victory became the stuff of legend, shared in hushed tones at coffee shops and posted endlessly on the HOA forum. Derek withdrew from the range, his pride battered, while the sharpshooters lost their swagger. Marjorie's influence waned as residents began questioning her overreach. Ellen, true to form, returned to her quiet life, tending her garden and visiting the range on weekends. She never sought the spotlight, but her shots had changed Crestwood forever. The leaderboard, once Derek's shrine, now bore her name at the top, a testament to the woman who'd walked into a man's world and left it in pieces. If you loved this wild tale of an underdog taking down the HOA and the range's top dog, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell for more epic drama. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you were Ellen? See you in the next story.